Good morning, friends. Once again, I welcome you all to this e-learning platform of Ketetian College. In today's session, we are going to have character analysis of the characters in the Animal Farm by George Orwell. First, we'll have the look at the character analysis of Old Major. A wise and persuasive pig, Old Major inspires the rebellion with his rhetorical skill and ability to get the other animals to share his indignation. When he announces that he wishes to share the contents of his strange dream with his companions, all the animals comply, demonstrating the great respect they have for such an important, that is, major figure. His speech about the tyranny of man is notable for its methodical enumeration of man's wrong against the animals. Listing all of man's crimes, Old Major rouses the other animals into planning the rebellion. His leading them in singing Beast of England is another demonstration of his rhetorical skills, for after he teaches animals a song about a world untainted by human hands, the animals sing it five times in succession. The flaw in Old Major's thinking is that he places total blame on man for all the animals' ills. According to him, once they remove man from the scene, then the root cause of hunger and overwork will be abolished forever. Clearly, Old Major believes that man is capable only of doing harm and the animals are capable only of doing good. Such one-dimensional thinking that ignores the desire for power inherent in all living things can only result in its being disapproved. Also ironic in Old Major's admonition to the animals, remember also that in fighting against man, we must not come to resemble him. This warning is ignored by Napoleon and the other pigs, who, by the novel's end, completely resemble their human masters. Now, we'll have the character analysis of another character, that is of Snowball. Snowball is the animal most clearly attuned to Old Major's thinking, and he devotes himself to bettering the animals in intellectual, moral, and physical ways. He brings literacy to the farm so that the animals can better grasp the principles of animalism by reading the 7 commandments he paints on the barn wall. He also reduces the commandments to a single precept, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, so that even the least intelligent animals can understand the farm's new philosophy. The thinker of the rebellion, Snowball shows a great understanding of strategy during the Battle of the Cowshed, and while his various committees may fail, the fact that he attempts to form them reveals the degree to which he wants to better the animals' lives. His plan for the windmill is similarly noble, since its construction would give the animals more leisure time. His expulsion at the hands of Napoleon, however, suggests that force, not good intention, governs the harm. Now we'll have another character analysis, that is of Napoleon. While Joan's tyranny can be somewhat excused due to the fact that he is a dull-witted drunkard, Napoleon's can only be ascribed to his blatant lust for power. The very first description of Napoleon presents him as a fierce-looking boar with a reputation for getting his own way. Throughout the novel, Napoleon's method of getting his own way involves a combination of propaganda and terror that none of the animals can resist. Note that as soon as the revolution is won, Napoleon's first action is to steal the cow's milk for the pigs. Clearly, the words of Old Major inspired Napoleon not to fight against tyranny, but to seize the opportunity to establish himself as a dictator. The many crimes he commits against his own comrades range from seizing 9 puppies to educate them as his band of killer guard dogs to forcing confessions from innocent animals and then having them killed before all the animals' eyes. Napoleon's greatest crime, however, is his complete transformation into Jones. Although Napoleon is a much more harsh and stern master than the reader is led to believe Jones ever was. By the end of the novel, Napoleon is sleeping in Jones' bed, eating from Jones' plate, drinking alcohol, wearing a derby hat, walking on 2 legs, trading with humans, and sharing a toast with Mr. Pilkington. His final act of propaganda, changing the seventh commandment to all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, reflects his unchallenged belief that he belongs in complete control of the farm. His restoration of the name Manor Farm shows just how much Napoleon has wholly disregarded the words of Old Major. Now we'll have a look at the character analysis of another character, that is Squealer. Every tyrant has his scoffants, and Napoleon has one in Squealer, a clever pig who, as the animals say, could turn black into white. Throughout the novel, he serves as Napoleon's mouthpiece and minister of propaganda. Every time an act of Napoleon's is questioned by the other animals, regardless of how selfish or severe it may seem, Squealer is able to convince the animals that Napoleon is only acting in their best interest and that Napoleon himself has made great sacrifices for Animal Farm. For example, after Squealer is questioned about Napoleon stealing the milk and wind-fallen apples, he explains that Napoleon and his fellow pigs must take the milk and apples because they contain substances absolutely necessary to the well-being of a pig. He further explains that many pigs actually dislike milk and apples and tells the questioning animals, "It is for your sake that we drink that milk and eat those apples." His physical skipping from side to side during such explanation parallels his skipping words, which are never direct and always skirt the obvious truth of the matter at hand. As the novel proceeds, he excuses Napoleon's tyranny and sullies Snowball's reputation, just as Napoleon desires. The most outrageous demonstration of his skipping is when he convinces the animals that Boxer was taken to a veterinary hospital instead of the knackers. Next, now we will have the character analysis of Boxer. From the picture itself, we'll come to know what sort of the character is Boxer. Always he go on repeating, "I will work harder, Napoleon is always right." Now, horses are universally prized for their strength, and Boxer is no exception. Standing almost 6 feet tall, Boxer is a devoted citizen of the farm whose incredible strength is a great asset to the rebellion and the farm. As soon as he learns about animalism, Boxer throws himself into the rebellion's cause. At the Battle of the Cowshed, Boxer proves to be a valuable soldier, knocking a stable boy unconscious with his mighty hoop. Note that Boxer, however, is not bloodthirsty and feels great remorse when he thinks he has killed the boy. His rising early to work on the farm and his personal maxims, "I will work harder," reveal his devotion to the animals' cause. He also proves himself to be the most valuable member of the windmill building team. Boxer's great strength, however, is matched by his equally stunning innocence and naivety. He is not an intelligent animal. Recall his inability to learn any of the alphabet past the letter D, and therefore can only think in simple slogans, the second of which, "Napoleon is always right," reveals his childlike dependence on an all-knowing leader. Even when he collapses while rebuilding the windmill, his first thoughts are not of himself but of the work. It is my lung. It does not matter. I think you will be able to finish the windmill without me. His hopes of retiring with Benjamin after his collapse display the extent of his innocence, since the reader knows that Napoleon has no intention of providing for an old, infirm horse. Even when he is being led to his death at the knackers, Boxer needs to be told of his terrible fate by Benjamin and Clover. He becomes wise to Napoleon's ways too late, and his death is another example of Napoleon's tyranny. Next, now we'll have another character analysis that is of Molly. Unlike Boxer, who always thinks of others, Molly is a shallow materialist who cares nothing for the struggles of her fellow animals. Her first appearance in the novel suggests her personality when she enters the meeting at the last moment, chewing sugar and sitting in the front so that the others will be able to admire the red ribbons she wears in her mane. Her only concerns about the revolution are ones prompted by her ego. When she asks Snowball if they will still have sugar and ribbons after the rebellion, she betrays the thoughts of old Major and reveals her vanity. She is lulled off the farm by the prospect of more material possessions than she could enjoy in an animal governed world, making her as one to whom politics and struggle mean nothing. This is all about Molly. Now we'll have a look at the character analysis of Benjamin. As horses are known for their strength, donkeys are known for their stubbornness, and Benjamin stubbornly refuses to become enthusiastic about the rebellion, while all of his comrades delight in the prospect of a new, animal governed world. Benjamin only remarks, "Donkeys live a long time. None of you has ever seen a dead donkey." While this reply puzzles the animals, the reader understands Benjamin's cynical yet not unfounded point. In the initial moments of the rebellion, Animal Farm may seem a paradise, but in time it may come to be another form of the same tyranny at which they rebelled. Of course, Benjamin is proven right by the novel's end, and the only thing that he knows for sure, life would go on as it had always gone on, that is badly, proves to be a definitive remark about the animals' lives. Although pessimistic, he is a realist. Now we'll have the character analysis of Moses. With this tales of the promised land to which all animals retire after death, Moses is the novel's religious figure. Like his biblical counterpart, Moses offers his listeners descriptions of a place, Sugar Candy Mountain, where they can live free from oppression and hunger. At first, the pigs find him irksome since they want the animals to believe that Animal Farm is a paradise and fear that the animals will be prompted by Moses' tales to seek a better place. However, as conditions on the farm worsen, the pigs allow Moses to stay because his tales offer the animals the promise of rest after a weary, toilsome life. As Karl Marx famously stated, religion is the opium of the people, and Moses' tales of Candy Mountain likewise serve as an opiate to the animal's misery. Now we'll have the character analysis of Jones. Like George III to the American colonists or Tsar Nicholas to the Russian revolutionaries, Jones is the embodiment of the tyranny against which the animals rebel, and with good reason. An inept farmer and slovenly drunkard, Jones cares little for his manor farm and the animals who live there. The novel's first paragraph describes Jones forgetting, out of drunkenness, to shut the potholes for the hen houses, but remembering to draw himself a glass of beer before lumbering off to a drunken sleep. The fact that the rebellion is sparked by Jones forgetting to feed the animals adds to the overall impression of him as an uncaring master. For the remainder of the novel, he is portrayed as an impotent has-been, unable to reclaim his own farm and idling in a pub until his eventual death at his home. Long after Jones has been driven from the farm, the pigs invoke his name to scare the other animals into submission. Squealer's questions, "Surely, comrades, you do not want Jones back," elicits a knee jerk reaction in the animals, who fail to realize that the spirit of Jones has returned despite the farmer's physical absence. This is all about Jones. Now we'll have the character analysis of Frederick, the crafty owner of Pinchfield, a neighboring farm. Frederick is perpetually involved in lawsuits and reveals himself to be a cutthroat businessman. Despite his offers of sympathy to Jones about the rebellion at his farm, Frederick inwardly hopes that he can somehow turn Jones' misfortune to his own advantage. He attempts this by offering to buy a load of timber from Napoleon but paying for it with counterfeit notes. His subsequent attempt to take Animal Farm by force reveals him to be a man who always takes what he wants. In short, exactly the kind of man against which the animals initially wanted to rebel. By the novel's end, however, Napoleon has proven himself to be more greedy and double dealing than Frederick at his worst. Now we'll have the character analysis of Pilkington. The owner of Foxwood, a neighboring farm, in disgraceful condition, Pilkington becomes an ally to Napoleon. This alliance, however, has a rocky start when Napoleon changes the pigeon's message of death to Jones, Frederick to death to Pilkington, and Pilkington refuses to help when the farm is attacked by Frederick. However, Napoleon and Pilkington eventually reconcile since they are, in essence, made of the same moral fiber and need each other to prosper, as seen when Pilkington sells part of his land to Napoleon. In the novel's last scene, Pilkington praises what Napoleon has done with Animal Farm, getting more work out of the animals with less food and likening the lower animals to humanity's lower classes. The final moments of the novel, when Pilkington and Napoleon each attempt to cheat the other at cards, shows that their friendship is simply a facade each is using in order to better swindle the other. This is all about the character analysis of the characters in The Animal Farm by George Orwell. Thank you.